All right, guys, let's talk about Jim Herd and the firing of Ric Flair. But before we do so, and I throw it to Doc and you, Harper, for comment, let's listen to the promo that Herd cut or announcement. I don't want to call it a promo. Let's call it an announcement. Let's go to that right now, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Thank you, Jim Ross, and hello, wrestling fans. My name is Jim Herd, and I'm the Executive Vice President of World Championship Wrestling. I'm here to read a very important statement from the World Championship Wrestling Board. World Championship Wrestling is saddened to report that after extensive negotiations with Nature Boy Ric Flair stretching over the course of nearly 1 year, the parties have been unable to arrive at a mutually satisfactory contractual relationship. As a result, the WCW Board has decided that the best course of action for WCW and its fans is to declare the World Championship title vacant and to determine a new champion at the Great American Bash, July the 14th in Baltimore. Lex Luger, the #1 contender and current United States champion, will remain on the title card at the Great American Bash. His opponent will be determined by the WCW Board, and I will be back later in this program with that decision. On a personal note, I want to take this opportunity to extend my best wishes to Ric Flair and wish him the best in the future. He has been a great champion. Back to Jim Ross at ringside.
Fans, that's one of the most flabbergasting announcement I have ever heard. Nature Boy Ric Flair stripped of the WCW World Heavyweight Championship.
I've never heard, that's never happened before in World Championship Wrestling.
Fans, I've been in the sport 20 years this year. I've been around a lot of big announcements, but I cannot believe that monumental announcement from Executive Vice President Jim Herd, who will be the opponent of Lex Luger at the Great American Bash. As you heard Mr. Herd say, we'll find out that a little bit later in the broadcast. But again, the WCW Championship Committee has stripped Ric Flair of the World Heavyweight Championship. Ric Flair no longer is the WCW champion, and we'll find out who Lex Luger's opponent will be a little bit later here on TBS. But right now, let's go back up to the ring. The Z-Man is in progress.
All right, so Doc, I want to get your reaction to God, Jim Herd's so terrible, but I also have some stuff from Flair's explanation on what actually happened. This was on his DVD release, the Definitive Collection. But I want to know what first. Go ahead and throw in what you got from Jim Herd here, who's pissed you off to no end.
Book it, bitch.
Okay. More, please.
Hey, we've just decided in 1985 to cut Joe Montana.
Yeah. I'm like, fuck it, man.
Now, someday we'll have Steve Young, but that's not today, so he's cut anyway.
Yeah. That's about it. I mean,
what a fucking moron.
What do you think about Herd actually thanking Flair?
I thought that was some chicken shit bullshit to try to cover it. That's some bullshit you do to try to cover up the shit that you caused.
Yeah.
And make it look like it wasn't your fault.
So, what else you got from Herd's promo or announcement here, Doc, before I go into a few things that I have that I wanted to tell y'all?
No, I think it's important to see what the other side of this, because we all know there's no way to slice this that comes out positive. The air, that's why you get people yelling for Flair starting at the next pay-per-view. We want Flair.
Agree. So here's a couple things. One, back when Flair was still doing his show with Mark Madden, I think Madden asked him a question about this, and Flair claimed that he almost went to the WWF 5 separate times before this, before he finally left. And he claimed that the reason he just couldn't leave was because of Tully, Arn, and Barry. He didn't want to leave them behind. So that was something I wanted to mention. Now I got a pretty lengthy paragraph, but this is going to really put into context, or it gives Flair's side of, away from TV. We just heard what Herd had to say. He's given the corporate spin, I guess you would call it, right? Just the basic bullcrap line. Here's what Flair said. Flair says in his Definitive Collection DVD, Jim Herd lied to me about my contract. Then he called me in Daytona and said, I want you to lose the title. They wanted me to lose the title to Lex Luger. I said, no way. You promised it to Sting. Jim Herd went, I don't care what I promised Sting. I said, I do, and I'm keeping my word to him. That's what Flair said to Herd. We had spent all this time building Sting up, and he was ready to be the champion. I just said, I'm not doing it with Luger, and that's all there is to it. I said, I'll be more than happy to send you my contract. He said, you're not holding me up. Flair said, I'm not holding you up. I'm holding you to your word. And I had already had an opportunity to come up here again. He was talking about up here again being New York, WWF. He says, I called him back and I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He's talking to Herd now. I'm not waiting to Baltimore but I'll fly home from my vacation and I'll come to TV in Columbus next week and I'll lose the title to Barry Windham. He said, well, why Barry? Flair says, because Barry deserves it. And Herd then said, let me think about that. So I got on the plane, left my family, flew to Charlotte, packed my bags, and he called me on the phone and said, just forget about it. I'm sending Doug Dillinger over to get the belt. Flair said, you better send a check for $25,000 plus interest because that's how much deposit I've got on the belt, which at that point Flair hadn't gotten back. Herd then told him, according to Flair, fuck you. And I said, it ain't fuck me, it's fuck you. That's Flair telling him that. Then I called Vince. Doug knocked on my door. I said, sorry, Doug. And Doug already knew. Doug and Flair were friends. He said, Doug said, I didn't like Jim Herd either. Nobody did. So I called Vince and I said, I'm ready to come. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, I got the belt too. So that's the way it went down. So Herd, obviously he's not going to air dirty laundry on television, but that's how it went down. And I'd heard this before. I had to reread it again. I knew he wanted to drop it to Sting. He didn't want to drop it to Lex. And then his thing was he was going to drop it to Luger and then, drop it to Barry. And then Barry could then drop it to Luger at the Bash. But Herd, he wouldn't even do that. Like, this is just dumb. Like, they would have been hot potato in the belt, but just do what the man wants to do if you're not going to have him anymore. You created even more stupidity by holding the belt up. I don't know, Doc. This is why you don't have pizza freaking managers running the second biggest company in the world at the time. Well, in America for sure.
So I worked in pizza longer than I worked in fast food by a long stretch. And I got almost as many stories about pizza as I do about fast food.
So we're talking about the Pizza Hut or Domino's cooler now too, huh? I'm just kidding.
For real. The Domino's cooler walk in is a real place. And I have never met a pizza manager, owner, franchise owner, district manager, regional manager. You have it. This should be booking wrestling. Now, I'm going to say something that may surprise everybody here. I think Flair's wrong.
Oh, you got to explain why you think Flair's
Yeah.
wrong. As PN News and Tim Fry is going to wrestle in the background and News is going to win. But continue, please.
At some point, if he quit the booking committee, I think he gets a say in who he drops it to. But if they want to drop it to Luger, he needs to drop it to Luger. Now, I think here's how the world works, and it's not on Twitter. Herd's also wrong for not coming to a better solution and getting into a pissing contest with Flair. But Flair going, well, I promised to Sting a year ago. Well, things change. It's business. It's wrestling. And maybe Luger's been hot too. And I think Flair kind of misses that. Is that Luger was over as a motherfucker for it. So he probably has some personal feelings with Luger. Some personal animosity back then. Now, none of this should have escalated to where it's escalated to, and allowed Hurd to just basically pour gasoline and light, not take the firebreaker's advice and light a match on the whole thing.
I think one of the things is Walmart, the fat Walmart ladies dancing in the background. I think one of the things you're also forgetting here, though, is so I agree there's some stuff with Flair that you're like, wait, well, we know you promised a Sting, but Luger is hot. I don't know if we can really go that route. You got to remember, too, though, that, Hurd wanted to repackage Flair at this time. And he, cut off his hair and he wanted him to do a stupid gimmick. And, Flair was already just the thing is, it was at a boiling point. He was, you've been there before, somebody that just pisses you off to no end. It ain't going to take much for them to set you off. It's just natural human instinct. They're already pissing you off. They're your boss. So you're already on edge. And the thing about Flair, for what it's worth, you can agree or disagree. One thing you can't disagree on is he had leverage. He had leverage.
And I'm going to tell you this. I don't think he didn't go up north because of his buddies.
Why do you think he didn't go up north?
Well,
before this, you mean?
So Flair calls it self-confidence issues, right? He always mentions that, right?
I've heard him say that before, yeah.
That's because he's an old man from the wrestling business and has undiagnosed anxiety.
Oh, no.
Which is why he drank all the time. Part of the reason why he drank all the time. And then, as he said, got hooked on taking Xanax to go to sleep. He said this on his recent podcast. And I'm just saying, he has anxiety. And I bet you self-confidence / anxiety he wasn't sure he knew he was a big fish down south, of course, but he wasn't completely sure he could go be that guy up north. I know he could. You know he could. We all know he could. And he did. But I bet you that had a lot to do with it.
The thing is,
but the point is, Hurd, in my opinion, without any knowledge, sees everybody there as I'm the boss and you're the employee. And you know full fucking well that if you're a boss, you don't treat every employee equally. You treat them all fairly, but not equally.
The problem with this is,
and so Flair should have. Y'all gonna cut Drew Brees in 2015? Fuck
no.
it.
Fuck it. Let's just cut him.
You're gonna find you're gonna find a way to work it out.
You're gonna find a way to work it out. And even if he's wrong, you're gonna bend over backwards. It's like, hey, General Manager comes in, Sean Payton comes and tells him, hey, we need you to start throwing the ball like fucking Peyton Manning does. Get the fuck out of here.
You got to be doing some heinous, like Flair or the Star at that point has got to be doing some real heinous stuff for you to just piss off, like just be like, nope, I'm done with you. And it kills me because I know how the wrestling business works. There's a lot of ego involved. I get the egos in pro wrestling.
There has to be for it to work and be successful.
Yes,
but it's to me it's the worst. It's like the worst business when it comes to egos. Harper knows what I'm talking about, man. You get around these guys and Jesus Christ, I don't know how they walk through doorways because their heads are so big. And the thing about pro wrestling that makes it different than quote unquote real sports is it's a performance-based industry, but it's not performance in terms of how many yards you get in the game and touchdowns you're scoring. It's a little bit different. Like the measurables can be subjective with pro wrestling, whereas it's not as subjective. It's more objective when it comes to sports. And man, I know for a guy like Hurd having to deal with Flair or any talents there, it was hard. And the thing about it, Flair will even tell you he had trouble dealing with Dusty back in their heyday. Because he said that on that Madden show way back when. He was like, I almost left a few times because of Dusty. He was like, I loved working with him and stuff, but just dealing with him I just was like, man, I got to get out of here. So, I mean, but I'm guessing cooler heads prevailed back then. You notice he never left under Dusty's watch. So, I mean, there's something to that as well, where it's like, okay, well, him and Dusty
Dusty was also Flair's hero, which meant that Flair knew that Dusty knew the business, and there's a respect there, even in hidden underneath the argument that says he's not. We're alike, even though we don't agree. Hurd was an outsider.
I'm just saying they were cooler. Here's the thing, and I know Dusty's not alive anymore, but to me, if Dusty's alive today and Rick had bad blood with Dusty in terms of booking, I'm not like real bad blood, but just disagreements. You know how it is. He's not bad mouthing Dusty today.
No.
Hurd, he still is like, this dude's an idiot. Like,
yeah, and I tell you, pretty much everyone still hates him.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like Missy, she was on Twitter months ago.
Missy, I mean Jim Cornette. I mean, they all still hate his ass.
Bro, I don't know if there's any of them. Like, I'm sure there's somebody out there who's insignificant who's like, oh, he wasn't that bad. But you're right. Like Cornette, Sullivan, Flair. I mean, none of them really are like, oh yeah, he wasn't that bad. They're all like, this dude was just didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. And he's running this company. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
It just gets worse.
And you got to worry about a guy who doesn't truly understand. Like, I'm pretty sure he cut that promo thinking he's the baby face. He's convinced that he's the baby face.
Yeah, he's like Vince with the whole
yeah.
job.
And he's doing the Rick screwed Rick, and then he's going to come out to that pay-per-view and get hot because everybody's yelling for Flair. What a moron.
It's so funny. You hear him chanting, "We want Flair." It's so fun. It's just like,
what a doofus.
What an idiot.
Jim Hurd is going to make another announcement shortly about who Luger is going to wrestle for the title at the Great American Bash, and JR says stay tuned. We'll address that shortly. Scott Steiner wins. I'm sorry, Rick Steiner wins. Doc, any other thoughts before I go to Jim Hurd's second announcement of the episode that we just have to hear?
Just play it.
That bad, huh? All right, so coming off of everything we heard a few minutes back or a second ago with Jim Hurd, here's his second announcement about how they're going to deal with the title now that Jim Hurd decided he's done with Flair.
Gentlemen, to World Championship Wrestling, Jim Ross and Paul Lee Dangerously here at ringside. If you just joined us early in the broadcast, we heard comments from Executive Vice President Jim Hurd. The WCW Board of Directors and Championship Committee has stripped Nature Boy Ric Flair of the World's Heavyweight Championship. We will have a championship match in 8 days at the pay-per-view. It will be Lex Luger, Paul, and an opponent. You have any guess?
I have no idea who this could be, but I know that he's coming out of the WCW Top 10.
I understand that Mr. Hurd is standing by. Let's go back to the media room.
Let's go to him.
Thanks, guys. The WCW board has made its decision, and I'm sure you will be as happy as I am to sanction the following bout on the July 14th Great American Bash for the World Heavyweight Championship in Baltimore. The World Heavyweight Championship bout. It's Lex Luger versus Barry Windham. What a bout. What a night. The Great American Bash, July the 14th from Baltimore, Maryland.
What a match
Barry Windham.
What a match that is going to be.
Huh?
Former tag team partners Barry Windham and Lex Luger will wrestle for the heavyweight championship of the world in 8 days on pay-per-view.
Barry Windham and Lex Luger. Now, here are two guys that really know each other. They have been partners. They fought over the U.S. Heavyweight Championship 2 years ago. Now, in 8 days, they go at it for the Heavyweight Championship of the world.
What a broadcast it has been.
You're
Luger
welcome.
and Windham for the world title in 8 days. Let's go back up to Gary Capetta.
So here's the irony, Doc. Remember how Flair said, well, okay, I'll just drop it to Barry and then Barry can drop it to Luger at the Bash. this is what's happening anyway. Like, it's not happening, but the two guys are going to wrestle anyway. That's how dumb Herd is. Just let him drop the title to Barry. You got your title then. Barry drops it to Luger. It's the same. It's going to be the same. I shouldn't say. Spoiler alert. It's going to be the same damn result. That's how dumb he is.
I'm surprised that JR didn't turn to Paulie and go, look, we can't agree on much, but I think we can both agree that we work for a dumb shit.
Oh, boy.
Do you see how
you know that call earlier that when JR was talking and Paulie was on the background, he was probably calling Eddie Gilbert down in the Southeastern going, can I come down?
Yeah, right.
Y'all guys fight down there?
Yeah, right. It's like, fuck, I'm making good money here. They got to kick me out.
He goes back there before ECW though, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And he tried to do a thing with Crockett.
Oh, yeah. That was the thing in Texas, huh?
Yeah.
By y'all? Yeah. At Tully?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Doc, any thoughts?
Look, I ain't got no problem. We all know I ain't got no problems with no Barry Windham, but this is not what we needed to be doing, so fuck it.
I just think that the irony is one of Flair's suggestions is, okay, you don't want to drop it to Sting? I'll drop it to Barry. He deserves it, and he can drop it to Luger. Like,
you ain't never seen a manager do stupid shit like that?
Bro, yes, I've seen it where you say, look, here, I understand you're my manager, but I'm an expert in this particular thing. Here's what you should do. You're going to get that same exact outcome. It's just not going to take as many steps.
I'm the boss.
That's exactly what happens. And then you end up 6 months down the road, and you got to do what you ultimately suggested, and then you don't even get the credit for it. They get the credit, like they did it. Well, if you'd have listened to me 6 months ago, we would have already been past this dilemma onto the next one of the 100 that you cause daily. But, that's not how it works. So hypothetically, I don't mean this as a
You got to realize
thing, right?
that at the shoot job you're at, very little of it is about drawing money. It's about who's in charge.
So I just heard in these announcements, he is the most uncomfortable executive I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of uncomfortable executives. He is probably the worst with the way he's reading the announcement from the piece of paper. But again, we're going to have Lex and Barry, which Flair said, let's just put it on Windham and he can wrestle Luger. So we're going to get that match anyway. But this time, we're going to have to go get a title. And wait till you see the damn title that they have at this pay-per-view. Because, remember, Flair took the title with him.
Oh, yeah. Did he take a tag team title and kind of finagle it?
I don't want to spoil it because the patrons, just wait. When we review the pay-per-view, yes. Absolutely. So, yeah, all that in a nutshell, sure. By the way, we didn't talk about this, but in late July, Bobby Heenan does show up and does the promo with the WCW World title, the big gold, I should call it, on WWF. And then it was not until September the 9th of 91 that Flair did appear with Heenan on TV, I think on Primetime Wrestling. The last part about Flair leaving and Barry now getting the title match is now we throw it on old Barry Windham here, who's currently in the hospital fighting, so fight on, Barry. We throw it to old Barry Windham here to try to talk him into the building, and I think he does a good job. Here's Barry Windham.
Fans, it has certainly been a dynamic hour here on TBS. As you heard, the WCW Championship Committee has stripped Ric Flair of the world title. In 8 days it will be Barry Windham and Lex Luger in a cage on pay-per-view. The winner will be the new world heavyweight champion.
You know what? I'm going to tell you the difference between me and Lex Luger. The United States heavyweight champion is always the #1 contender. He may not defend his championship every night, but I'm the guy that's got to work hard. I'm #2. I'm the contender that's got to prove myself every night. And there's not a doubt in anybody's mind who the next heavyweight championship holder is. I am after the World Heavyweight Championship, and I'm not going to let Lex Luger stand in my way. I walked behind Ric Flair for 4 long years and made sure that he kept that championship belt. My turn is up, and I'm going to walk the aisle like the Nature Boy never could.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Barry, I want to tell you, these fans right here, I think, are solidly behind Lex Luger, it would seem.
Listen, if you'll open your ears a little bit, instead of being as biased as you always are, they're right here. These people know that I'm the world heavyweight champion, and I can take the belt at any given time. So if you don't like it, lump it.
Fans, it will be determined inside a steel cage, exclusively on pay-per-view in 8 days. For Gary Michael Capetta and Paul E. Dangerously, I'm Jim Ross. So long, everybody.
That's one of them old-time sayings. If you don't like it, lump it. I thought Barry did a really good job there on that promo.
Not Barry's
I
fault.
don't know. Yeah. And
I'm
him
surprised
and
they
Luger.
let him bring up Ric Flair. Nowadays,
They
it
keep
wouldn't.
talking about him in next week's episode too.
I mean, he was pretty direct too. I'll walk the aisle the Nature Boy never could. That's I mean, if you don't know any better, you'd think, oh my God, why's he got heat with Flair there saying that? But he's just working.
Yeah.
He's like, that was the other thing. I walked behind Flair for 4 long years. I made sure he kept that belt. Jesus. I mean, he's not lying. I thought he did a good job here, Doc. If you think everything we've dealt with this saga, with Jim Herd and what I read that Flair said and Herd's promos and announcement, I think Barry did as much as he could possibly do here to make us want to see this match at the pay-per-view. Even though it would have made more sense if he had the damn world title right now, given the circumstances, and he was defending it against Luger. But,
Man, you
Jim
tell
Herd
me
couldn't
we're
have
gonna
that.
get rid of Flair, and Flair will do business with Wyndham, and we're not going to have some kind of thing where Wyndham turns on Flair.
Mm.
Do something.
Something.
We just traded. So let me get this straight. We just traded Ric Flair to the opposition, and we didn't get anything back.
Nothing.
We
That's
didn't
like
get
trading off, Dak Prescott to the fucking.
No, it's not. Dak Prescott's not the world champ.
Well, okay, that would be like Kansas City trading Patrick Mahomes to
Yes.
the Cincinnati Bengals for a practice squad player
For nothing.
for nothing, for zero. Just
We just
take 'em.
think that we're better off without him, and we don't think it hurts us for you to have him.
That's the problem. That's the
Yeah.
problem. That's Herd's problem right there. He
Isn't it
thinks
crazy to have
We
that
think we've got
mentality?
a stronger case with these costume parties, as Harper called it, characters, and we're gonna do that, and we're good.
God.
So we're not. In fact, we're not upset about what's just happened. We're excited about the future. Get the fuck out of here.
I've heard that before. Ignore everything you've seen online. Just yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bro, if the milk smells bad, it's bad.
I don't give a fuck how white that shit is. Pour that shit down a fucking drain.
Well, I think y'all done buttoned it up pretty good here with what's happened with Flair and Herd. And, yeah, they traded Mahomes for a practice squad player, which I don't even think you can do that. But apparently you can when you're WCW in 1991. So, on that particular note, we do need to rate it and hand out some Rolexes. I do think I know how this rating and Rolex thing is going to go. Or reverse Rolex. I think if there was ever a week for a reverse Rolex, it definitely is this week. Before we do it, remember, become a patron, tinyurl.com/PatreonBTT. We're talking about the pay-per-view that's coming up. You can only listen to the review of ours there on Patreon at tinyurl.com/PatreonBTT.